With you, I actually didn't like you.
Oh yeah, you told me I was like.
I didn't know you.
What was
I didn't know you.
Yeah, what did you say? You thought I was a douchebag? Was it douchebag?
I just looked at you as a Bush League flipper.
Okay.
I look at you, and I see you like I see like the handsome home buyer. I see you on TV, like this guy with the super Long Island accent, like with the funky TV commercial. I'm like, who is this guy?
I got an accent. Let's talk about this on the podcast.
We're
rock. We're ready to go? Yeah, kid. Welcome back to another episode of the Handsome Homebuyer Podcast. My name is Charles, aka the Handsome Homebuyer, formerly Captain Perma, but we still love him. What's the phone number? I'm gonna be super impressed. No way.
6777.
No, that's mine.
513-8838.
Yeah, bro, you are freaking impressive. Hair and that today. 516-513-8838, Captain Permit. Obviously, you know I'm the handsome home buyer. If you have a house that smells like cat pee or not, if you just have a house, period, I'm buying half a house right now. Interesting scenario.
Yeah. You can buy that with a 203K.
Which we're going to get into. The 203K way. Don't leave me out there. I want to buy it. 516-777 sold. Obviously, this podcast and every other is sponsored by.
I know.
Bring it home, Greg.
Cardinal Financial.
That's right. Sal Rizzolo, Cardinal Financial out of Patchogue. We know him. We love him. He gets shit approved. You know what he also gets approved? 203K loans, baby.
Dude, hell yeah, man. I got to talk to him. I've never met him, but
great guy. Just loan officers are tough, man. It's tough to get good loan officers. You know, I see the look on your face. We're going to delve into this.
Talk a lot about that.
So, how long have we known each other for? Did we meet originally on
the pod? You invited me on the podcast. We met via social.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. I actually didn't like you.
Oh yeah, you told me I was like.
I didn't know you. I didn't know you.
Yeah. What did you say? You thought I was a douchebag? Was it douchebag?
I just looked at you as a Bush League flipper.
Okay.
I look at you, and I see you like I see like the handsome home buyer. I see you on TV, like this guy with the super Long Island accent, like with the funky TV commercial. I'm like, who is this guy?
I got an accent.
Right?
I got an accent.
Yeah, we all do. We all do.
Oh, okay.
Just leave New York, and people are like, oh, you have a New York accent. See, I feel like I try to kill it because I'm like on social all the time, and like I try to like.
You don't have a bad one.
Oh, it could be bad.
Yeah.
I put a show on for that. I shouldn't, but it's just like, I think, I don't know. Anyway, point being is I wanted to not like you. But like, I watched all your content and I loved it all.
Nice.
And then honestly, what I also did was I wanted to see your inner workings of your business. So I saw the properties that you were posting and I would check and I would like prop stream it and like see like what you picked it up for and like and I was like, oh wow, he's actually like really doing it right. Because I was always up against like these guys that just had more money than sense and they're like buying at like 95 cents on the dollar and like all these things. And like you said, like, I think you said it on the episode with Dan O'Neill, like the last one. And basically how, you know, all these people are kind of faking it till they make it type of thing. And you were not doing that. And I was like, okay. And then you invited me on the podcast. And I was like, oh my God, okay.
Shit, I can't hate him anymore. Damn it, he's being nice to me. I want to hate him, but I can't.
No, literally, you're that person, which I love to be proven wrong. I always think I'm a good judge of character. I really do. But when I'm wrong, I get excited because I like to know it because I don't want to judge people.
This is interesting because knowing you, I don't feel like you're the kind of guy that could dislike anybody.
I don't. I really don't. However, like, you know, you just have those preconceived notions.
Yeah.
And again, you know what's around in Long Island and stuff and just in like the competition we're up against. And yeah, man, I was like hoping, you know, I was like hoping you weren't going to be as cool as you were, but like actually happy that you were as cool as you were.
Nice.
If that makes sense.
I like it.
All right.
Well, it turned out great. Here we are years later.
Right. Now, like, here we are. And
we spent some time together at the boardroom out in Texas, which was super cool.
Yes. Great
event. Got you riled up. Anybody who doesn't belong to masterminds, I was never like a mastermind person. I was always like, you know what? I'm here in New York, but you know what? Anywhere you live, if you're not communicating with other people that are in the industry, you're kind of on your own island, and all you're really doing is handicapping your success.
Well, yeah, and that's kind of what I was alluding to. I missed the point, but that was the point that I wanted to make with Dan O'Neill's episode. You were just saying how we are stuck here, right? And we're stuck in like one type of way. So I was like looking at you and thinking like, you know, like, are you doing things like, because guys in Long Island, just, it seems like everyone had more money than sense, at least for what I was up against, right?
Yeah.
But then like I see you and like your numbers are dialed in. You're actually buying properties at the right price. You're not like hobbying this, you're actually doing it, right? And I feel like you were always up against those hobbyists and stuff. But anyway, so I just wanted to touch on that because again, the big point is like, you like nationally, there's so much more out there. So it was cool that you came to Boardroom. I was stoked when you came.
It's wild. No, I had a great time.
You learn a lot from a lot of these guys that are like killers, man.
You learn, it's like twofold, right? So you learn a lot from guys. Then you also realize like, if you ever doubted yourself, you're like, you know what? I'm really doing it at a high level too, which is kind of cool. So it's a give and take there.
Yeah.
And it also just gets you out of your normal everyday 9 to 5 mundane existence.
Yeah.
And it gets like the juices flowing and gets you fired up.
There's a lot of power in being in a room with other people that understand what you're doing, right? I kind of get like almost like a little bit of a depression every time. I'm a high, low guy. So like I get there and I feel good being around people because, you know, like my situation, I just got so many things going on and like W-2 and like all these things, right? Being in this bubble we are here. And then you go out and you kind of get refreshed, like seeing other people doing it and like understanding like we all kind of have the same problems. We all face the same issues and stuff. So being in those rooms, sometimes it's just, I always say to people like real estate investing is a very lonely game, especially for guys like that I'm helping that are just starting out in the game. You know, they work a W-2 job, they're around family. Maybe these people didn't come from a place where they know about investing. Investing's new to them, right? So it's hard when you're trying to convey to people what you're trying to do getting into real estate investing, and people tell you like, you know, like I remember when I was getting into it, you know, I had like, you know, uncles, family members be like, oh, you don't want to buy houses, you don't want to be a landlord, you don't want to mess with toilets and stuff like that. And like the funny thing about all that was none of these people owned any properties ever, right? So it's tough, like when you're around people that understand the game and like you feed off of that and you know that there's other people actually out there that are like have the same problems and have the same aspirations as you. It's also like I talk about this a lot, but it's also about, you know, if you grow up even in like a nice upper middle class area, you don't really witness greatness often. So when you don't witness greatness often, you don't strive. It's harder, I shouldn't say you don't, but it's harder to strive for something that is just totally outside the reality of you or anybody that you know. When you get out of the little bubble that is wherever you grew up and you see that there are people that are trying to and accomplishing insane things, all of a sudden the impossible becomes possible and it completely changes your mindset. Yeah, I remember that. You said something about that recently, and you were like, you know, you when you grow up in kind of wherever you grow up from, you have like, you know, your doctors and your lawyers, and that this is not to downplay doctors or lawyers by any means or anything like that. But like for us, we see that in a very local level. It's like, wow, that's the creme de la creme. But then you go to a place and like, you know, like Boardroom guys are flipping like, you know, 1,000 deals a year. And it's like, whoa, like that's a big deal, right? And you get to just see that there's levels to this game. And, you know, so it's cool to get into those other rooms and just see what's out there. But so I want to kind of talk about, so you have a very unique niche, right? First of all, you have the dopest name ever. I know, you always say that, and it makes me so proud. It's a great name. It's my only creative thing in my entire life. I find that hard to believe. You work at a creative job. I mean, you work for Disney. It's like the most creative place on planet Earth. No, it is. Oh, you're an engineer. Yeah, but that's the thing, right? So I'm an engineer. So that I don't do any of the creative stuff. I do like the boring nuts and bolts stuff. Yeah, but you like get the building to not fall over. Yeah, that's not creative. That's just like making sure people don't die, you know? I always knew you were an engineer, but it's just interesting that you're saying engineer, whereas before we were talking about how like you have a tendency to like overanalyze. Yes, yeah. Which I guess makes perfect sense. Yeah. See, it all comes full circle, right? There you go. So the 203K way, which again, dopest name, just rolls off your tongue, is basically a product that's like totally underutilized. Like people hear about it, but when they hear about it, it's kind of like, even myself included, when we first got on the podcast together the last time,
when I would ever see a 203K loan come in, I'd be like, oh, I'm not doing this shit. Like, it's not going to work. No one knows how to do it, blah, blah, blah. But as it turns out, it's like literally the most underutilized, but like amazing weapon in your arsenal, especially for people that are trying to house hack, which is massive.
Especially now.
Exactly. So if you can kind of just explain to the viewers at home, A, what a house hack is, and then B, what the 203K loan is and how it works.
Sure. So the house hack, so I'll start with the 203K, make a little more sense this way, right? So the 203K loan is an FHA loan. It allows you to, so FHA has become a bad name over the years, right? With the crazy seller's market, right? No one wanted to work with an FHA buyer, right? So the 203K is another addition of that. It allows you to wrap the renovation cost into your purchase price as well, okay? So a really cool thing about it is you could buy foreclosures, you could buy as-is properties, things that were usually only reserved for cash investors, right? Now, the other cool benefit of the 203K, and this is really what allowed me and sparked me to get into it, was that FHA allows you to buy up to a 4-unit property. So if you're new into real estate investing, a big thing that people like to get into is house hacking. So house hacking is when you live in one part of your property and you rent out other portions of it. It's funny that it has a cute new name now, house hacking, but I mean, my parents did this and it was called like trying to live on Long Island and pay your mortgage,
trying to survive.
Yeah, I mean, my dad like made a little apartment in the basement and like rented it out to my uncle, and like that was that. And like, you know, when, you know, my grandparents moved here from, you know, Italy and from Ireland, you know, they lived in these, you know, like, you know, multi-family houses in the city and in Queens and stuff. And like one person would take on the loan and they'd all rent it out together. And that was the way that you paid for things, right? I mean, it's not like an unheard of concept. But anyway, it's got a cute new term now. And a lot of people are, you know, especially people that are savvy, especially want to be real estate investors, but don't have a house yet. They make their first house a house hack because they're able to rent out the other portions of the house. Effectively live for free, close to it. And if you're living for free, you're saving a big portion of your income. And it's just a great way to start, you know, building your nest egg and everything like that. It also teaches you how to be a landlord, right? By proxy, it's a great way to do that. And what people do is they combine these low down payment owner occupant loans as a way to leverage themselves into the real estate investing game, which is what it did for me. The beauty of the 203K is that you kind of get the best of both worlds with house hacking and the BRRRR strategy. If you're familiar with the BRRRR strategy, right? Buy, renovate, refinance, you know, rent, repeat, right? Yeah. But anyway, long and short of it is you're basically flipping a house, you're building equity into the house, you're forcing equity into the house. And, you know, what we've been seeing in recent years is like, you know, just with the prices of everything and getting everything, having trouble getting into things. This has been another vehicle I've seen taking off just in the time that I've been doing this, for millennials and people that are trying to get into the housing market. It's giving you an edge and giving you a way to get into the game, right? You can buy a fixer-upper and also house hack, so live for free, make money on your house. When a lot of people feel like they can't even afford it, this is an option where you can afford it and actually reap the benefits in the process.
So like, let's get into the nuts and bolts of it, right? Because I'm even curious, because as you say, I start to think about it, I'm like, I don't have a primary residence. I'm like, can I do a 203K on like a 4-family and then flip out of it and keep getting them over and over and over again? So 203K is an FHA loan. So for all intents and purposes, it's 3.5%, 5%. What's the down payment?
FHA 203K, like FHA as well, is 3.5% down.
Got it.
Up to 4 units. It's still 3.5% minimum down payment.
Okay, so it's 3.5% of what? The purchase price plus the renovation cost. Can you roll closing costs in?
So, no, but there's ways to get crafty with it.
Okay.
You can't roll closing costs into it. You can roll a lot of costs into it. You can roll your permits, your fees, your architect fees. You can roll in, you know, you get draw inspections done by a 203K consultant throughout the process. They're basically a home inspector. They just wear this extra feather in their hat to do an draw inspections as the construction goes. So you can wrap stuff like that in. You know, people in my community, guys that I work with, we don't pay closing costs. There's just a lot of ways around it, whether it be, changing your offer price and asking for a seller concession, or, just during the negotiations, negotiating it out. People always love to say, like, cause I always say like minimum 3.5% down. People love to like be the whataboutisms on social media. Like, what about closing costs? Like, okay. Like, yes, you should have a little more than 3.5% down. Like, you're an adult, you should know that. But if I'm working with people and I tell people that are trying to do this, like, I'm a big believer in, especially if you're house hacking, you're not going to be paying the mortgage. Wrap in as absolute much as you possibly can, so that you can get out of it. But yeah, I mean, there's closing costs.
So how do you do that? Because closing costs, first of all, for everybody out there, there's nothing wrong with an FHA loan. Right? I take them all the time as someone that's selling houses. It's actually a lot easier for people to qualify for those things.
Sold FHA.
Yeah, there's no reason as a real estate investor to shy away from someone who's bringing you an FHA loan.
No.
So the closing costs on an FHA loan are typically high. Is that an accurate statement?
I mean,
they're higher
in
than
New York, maybe. I mean, people say it's another range of another 3% to 4%. It depends as a nationwide average, right? So I work with people all over the U.S. Mm-hmm. It's anywhere from a 3 to 5%. Now, one cool thing about FHA as well is you're able to get up to a 6% concession. Okay. So on my first property, my duplex that I bought in Farmingdale.
So right? all rules apply. Like, doesn't matter that it's a 2 or 3K. All FHA rules apply.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect.
Yep. So when I bought my duplex in Farmingdale, I only put $9,500 down, but my loan amount was $350. Okay. So
it's fucking wild, bro.
Yeah. $9,500 and the loan amount was $350. For the quick math people, they do the math in their head. They're like, I don't know how people do this, but they do it. And they're like, that's actually a lot less than 3.5%. I was like, yeah, it's actually 2.7. And they're like, well, why do you keep saying $9,500? It's because when I was doing negotiations with the foreclosure with the bank, I came up a little bit, they came down a little bit, we met each other, I came up a little bit, and I asked for 6% concession. So they gave me a full concession back. I actually made money back at the closing table.
Wait, so they cut you a check for the concession back?
Yeah. So my net was $9,500 out of pocket. It was 2.7%. Because I negotiated back the closing costs.
You could do that now? You could do that anytime? Doesn't matter?
Of course.
So whoever the lender is, they'll do it?
Yeah.
Wow.
These are like little tips and tricks and hacks and things. But yeah, I mean, again, it's an extremely powerful tool, right? When you think about what you're getting, we could go more into the nuts and bolts, obviously. But, I always say, with great power comes great responsibility. We've all heard that before. Okay. A 203K loan is like the textbook example of that, right? Think about, as an investor, how insane it is, the amount of leverage that they're giving you for 3.5% equity out of your pocket for all of that.
That's wild.
Right? 2 years of stable income and a credit score of 600, which is like bare minimum. If your credit score is under 6, you need to fix that before thinking about buying real estate. Let's just call it what it is. So in exchange for all those things, they're giving you all the money to purchase a property, all the money to renovate it, plus a 10% contingency.
Plus the closing costs.
If you know how to finagle it, yeah. If you negotiate it in, yes.
So, yeah, I mean, that's insane. Like, think about that. You're basically getting a house. It's almost like 2006-7 scary type of shit when you really think about it. Well, especially too now. I mean, you get now I don't condone it, but I know people that have done it out there. I'm a big believer in 3.5%. You got to put some skin in the game, right? If you don't put some skin in the game, it's just, this is not going to work. I always say, if you can't manage 10 grand, what makes you think you're going to manage 100? What makes you think you're going to manage $1 million, right? When if you can't even muster up 10 grand together, they're going to give you a property, you're going to build $150,000 in equity and now have tenants in there that you're going to be receiving all this money per month. If you can't manage that money doesn't get any easier to manage, right? But there's down payment programs, assistance programs that people are combining now
now. ADUs are becoming huge now. There's a lot of legislation going on with that. ADUs you do with 203Ks and home style loans. And now you're getting New York released something and they're giving you an extra $150,000 for ADU development right now. So you can combine all these things.
You can buy a house with a 203K loan, renovate the existing house, and have them give you more money to build an ADU in the back?
Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah.
We don't have those here. It sucks.
It's common.
You think so?
New York?
Yeah, you really think so?
It's spreading like wildfire.
I think the school districts will flip out.
They will, but it's happening in California. It's happening everywhere on the West Coast where they're overpopulated too. So listen, I mean, I understand now being in the, I bought a house last year. I used a home style loan. So home style is Fannie Mae's version of the 203K. Mm-hmm. It's the conventional version. It's better for two family better for single family.
Got it.
FHA is better for multi because no matter if you buy 2 unit, 3 unit, 4 unit, it's still 3.5% down throughout. On a home style, they up the down payment you needed. If you buy a duplex, it's 15% down. If you buy a triplex or a quad, it's 25% down. So obviously not as enticing.
Yeah.
The home style is a little easier. I'm going through the process right now for my forever home in Massapequa, and it's just about the same thing. But where was I going with this? With the home style loan, you can do the ADU thing also.
Yeah.
And I think the direction it's going in is you're going to use these renovation loans and people are going to start taking in ADUs. But anyway, where I was going with this was like being in I go around a lot. I got ADHD, so it happens. Where I was going with this was that now living in the suburbs, I can understand why people don't want it to be overpopulated and stuff like that, right? I was living in Queens and back. However, we can call a spade and know that there's a housing shortage, right? I don't know what the solution is. We're not building houses fast enough. That's for damn sure.
And we can't afford to anyway.
And right, who's can do it, especially in a place like New York, right? So is the answer ADUs? I don't know, but I am a big believer in house hacking. I am a big believer of providing housing for other people and being a landlord and reaping the benefits that the federal tax code gives us to be landlords and be property owners and everything like that. So I think it'll come here.
Let's get into the nuts and bolts of the 203K, right?
Yep.
About how it works. So you touched on a decent amount of it. You come in, you find a property. First you get pre-approved for a 203K loan. Anything special about the pre-approval? Normal shit. Credit score, 2 years worth of pay stubs, right?
Bingo. Everything there. The only thing I tell people is if they're looking for multifamily properties, which is a lot of people that are in my community and interested in this process. If you're looking for multifamily properties, you can also ask your lender for a conditional pre-approval. Mm-hmm. What that means is you give them an example 2-family, 3-family, 4-family property, and you ask them, and you get market rents, and they take a percentage of that. Yeah. And then they add that to your debt to income ratio.
It's usually about 75%.
It's 75% for a duplex, and then for triplex and quad, I believe it drops down to like 60 or something like that. Don't quote me on that. I'm not a lender, but it gives you a significant boost, right? So with me, when I bought my property in Farmingdale, I couldn't afford it on my own, right? Even back then, even at that, everyone says it was such a cheap price. I mean, if you saw the house, you would know why it was cheap. It's also a little while ago, but I actually found out kind of about house hacking, the whole multi-unit thing by accident. But what it enabled me to do was that extra income from that other unit that I was renting out got me right to the edge where I was able to afford the $350,000 loan. So, other than that, approval process is exactly the same. It's a doc loan, right? It's your primary residence, right? But it's 2 years tax returns,
600 credit score about.
Yeah, you should be a little higher probably. Credit score is going to affect your rate, but.
So you go out there and you go shopping.
Yep.
And you find the property. And so I guess at this point, I would say, do you have tips on how to sell it to the agents, right? I think this is something worth noting.
Sure.
A lot of people always fear what they don't understand.
Bingo.
Right? Doesn't matter what it is.
Yep.
So what are the tips? I'm sure that there's certain agents that, especially in a market like this, there are agents that have reservations about taking it. They're like, is it going to close? Is it going to take longer? My reputation's on the line. I have to, recommend this and rubber stamp it to my seller.
Yep.
What are your suggestions on how to sell this to agents in a way that gets it approved?
So, this needs to be a toolbox in every agent's arsenal. Whether they like it or not, you have to bring some sort of value beyond just cookie cutter arm's length transactions. That's my opinion with anything. You have to find what your client wants and what they want to get into. So if your client is specifically looking for fixer-uppers, give them what they want, right? Now, how do you sell it? How do you sell it to sellers, right? There's a couple things. Number one, you don't need an inspection. You technically are getting a 203K HUD consultant inspection, but your inspection is not going to dictate the sale of the property, right? You can have a bad inspection and still get the loan closed, okay? So when you place an offer, you say waiving inspection, right? So inspection's not, you're taking the property as is condition, so you're able to go in like that off the gate. Appraisal. You could effectively waive the appraisal, okay?
Huh.
Right? So the two reasons that people hate FHA get completely negated with the 203K FHA. Appraisal, which always kills a lot of 203K deals.
And the repairs that
the ridiculous repairs that you need to do, right?
Yeah.
So you get rid of the appraisal, reason being is the FHA 203K is the only loan on the market for consumers that I can think of that gives you 110% of the ARV value. So let that sink in for a second.
Yeah. So basically, for people who don't understand what that means is, they're giving you 110% of what this property is going to be worth after it's renovated.
Correct.
So
110% on the loan.
On the loan.
Now, that is, so technically it goes up to 113.5% all in. Now, I would never tell anybody to do that because I'm a big believer in building equity and forcing equity into the property. I'm a big believer in, if you're going to use a renovation loan, you're going to do a 203K. Now, listen, if you want to renovate your kitchens and baths and you want your house to look the way that you want it to look and you're willing to pay for it, absolutely. In my opinion, if you want to do that, don't go through the headaches of a renovation. I'm going through it now. Don't go through that if there's not going to be some reward at the end, right? But you should want that reward at the end, right? I tell people all the time right now, the American dream isn't dead. It just changed, right? Where the boomers were able to just get a job and work hard and reap the rewards for that. I think where we need to reap rewards, millennials and the new generations coming into this space, where we are going to reap our rewards is being creative and thinking outside the box and just doing things a little differently, right? So this is a prime example of that, of don't go for move-in ready houses. Put in some elbow grease, get into something, create equity, start your life with, $150,000, $200,000 net worth. Because you put in the work to deal with the renovation, work with the renovation, and get it over the finish line. But yeah, to your point, again, the point being 110% loan to value. Again, if you're just looking at it from a realtor's perspective, that's not going to kill your deal, right? I've had it, I know of a couple instances where we had real estate agents that it was an FHA, the appraisal didn't come back. It came back too low. They flip it to a 203K.
All good.
$5,000 is the minimum. Paint and appliances. $5,000 is not changing your loan payment much, right? So $5,000, buy new appliances, put paint in your house. That's your $5,000 money, $5,000, and then that's a 203K limited version, which is a much streamlined process. It's extremely way quicker. I don't recommend it if you're not doing anything more. If you're doing anything more than very lipstick type stuff, the limit on that is it goes up to 35,000 with contingency. But that's a very low paperwork. So what a lot of agents were doing, especially when things weren't hitting appraisals, especially in the last couple of years with all the fluctuations, they were flipping to a 203K, getting the 110% loan to value. They were able to close on something even if the buyer was overpaying, and they just got a $5,000 kickback to do little ththings that they were going to do to the property anyway.
That they would have had to come out of pocket for.
100%.
So, I know a decent amount about this process, so I'll bring it up because I think it's important for people to know. So you get the accepted offer, you sell the agent on it, you dazzle them, they're excited, they take it, and now it has to get approved. The only thing I will say about the 203K loan, which I think can be challenging, is because you have to deal with the sector that is the most challenging part of doing a fix and flip or reno of anything of any kind, which is contractors. They're the fucking worst, right? So the hardest part of anything is the contractors. Explain the contractor's role in the getting the loan approved portion of this.
Sure. So, listen, I agree with you wholeheartedly. My dad's a general contractor. I grew up in the business. I'm renovating my own house. It's not full transparency. It ain't any easier.
No.
It's still.
I feel like every time I see you, like it's going to drive me to drink.
Yeah. No. It's still going to be a process. Here's the thing, though. Home renovation is not going away anytime soon. We don't have a solution for it. I've said this on a couple different podcasts I've done recently, but this is a wild stat and it needs to be known. 80% of the housing inventory, the existing housing inventory in the United States is over 30 years old.
Yeah.
We are not building houses fast enough. Home builders, it costs more to build a house than some of these contractors are, able to sell it for.
Yeah.
So renovation is going to have to become a thing, and especially renovation lending, because people are going to realize that they can't afford to buy these fixed. Number one, they can't afford to buy something move-in ready, and
the product's not there a lot of times.
Yeah, it's not there, and you're going to have to put in the elbow grease to be able to afford some stuff, right? And that's okay, but we have to figure out how to make the process right. Now, my whole platform and everything I talk about with the 203K is to make it more accessible for people, because yes, it is very intimidating working with contractors. Even growing up in the business, I still am intimidated by it sometimes, right? The beauty of it is when you do all this process exactly how it's written, instead of looking at it as a pain in the ass, instead of looking at the paper trail as something that's hurting you, you have to look at it as this is what's going to help you ensure that this process gives you your best shot, right? The 203K loan is handled just as any large-scale construction project is handled, right? I worked in New York City construction for years, okay? The way that this process is handled is almost exactly the same, all right? What happens is you go in, you get into contract, right? Here, a lot of people make mistakes here. So I'm sitting here telling you, this is the process you need to follow if you want to do this, okay? The first thing that happens is you bring in someone called a 203K consultant. The 203K consultant is usually a home inspector, but when they're experienced, they really understand the process and they have a background in construction. They also know how to do cost estimating to some degree. What they are going to do to the property is they're going to go through and they're going to inspect the property for what needs to be done per code, guidelines, per HUD guidelines, and just make sure that it's going to be a safe house when you're done. So, hey, you have to get rid of this lead paint. Hey, you have to fix these windows. Hey, you have to put these handrails here, whatever. Just by local code standards, you have to get those things done. Good. Then you tell them what you would like to get done. I want to renovate this kitchen. I want to do these bathrooms. I want to change this layout. I want to do the siding. I want to re-roof it. All those things. You just go through the laundry list. There's really no limitation with the 203K and what you can do, as long as it's for the property in some degree. It can't be amenities or anything like that. It could, but if it's integral to the property, as long as it's in your budget, you could do whatever you want. You can get, Cambria countertops and get full line kitchen if you want, right? It doesn't have to be non-luxury. It could be whatever level. So you go through and you put all those things down. What the 203K consultant will then give you is something called an SOR, or a schedule of repairs. It is a line-itemed, detailed scope of work, okay? This is how every construction project should be done. Do you agree?
Absolutely. The 203K thing is kind of like training wheels. It forces you. Yes.
It forces you to do it the right way. People wonder why contractors screw them over and over and over again. Because they get in with a guy that gives them a lump sum number. They don't know what the scope is. So they start the project and they're like, oh, that wasn't included. That wasn't included. That's a change order. That's a change order. That's extra. They go in, they start without a timeline. You're shooting in the dark. You don't have a timeline. There's not a single job of any dollar amount I've ever done in New York City that did not have a clear scope of work and specifications and a timeline.
Yep.
Meanwhile, everybody does construction this way on their own houses. Why is it any different? It's not. And that's my whole thing that I tell people is like, if you do this the right way, this paperwork is not there to hurt you. It's actually training you to do construction the right way. Yep. So what you do and how you make this easy and how you combat all these issues is you use this paperwork to your advantage. So what you do is they create this scope of work. What do contractors hate most about doing estimates and doing all that stuff?
Time-consuming paperwork.
Right. They don't want to write out everything. They don't want to do it.
Yep.
The SOR, it's done for you. They give you another printout.
Oh, I thought that the contractor actually had to write the estimate for you, the line item estimate for you. No?
They could back into it later.
Okay.
This is where everybody messes it up. What happens is, so there's a lot of 203K consultants out there that use the contractor's scope and bid. They do it the opposite.
Okay.
The order in which it should be done is the 203K consultant who's experienced and actually understands the process and understands how to create a good scope of work.
Do they understand? Is there pricing applied to it at that point, or it's just the scope of, oh, okay. Got it.
So the FHA guidelines are funny, right? Because they're kind of they're vague, but they're in certain instances they're specific enough where they're specific enough where people are caught red-handed all the time. One of those instances is the 203K consultant, as part of the FHA guidelines, is supposed to write an unbiased work assessment and a projected value of what they think the renovation budget's going to be. The 203K consultant actually technically has the last say on whether or not the contractor's number is correct. Okay. The contractor's number is who's getting paid, but it's the 203K consultant's responsibility to see if the contractor comes in and gives a crap bid and says that the whole project is going to be 50 grand, and that 203K consultant knows there's no way in hell this project's getting done for 50. It's probably 100, which happens all the time.
Yep.
It is the 203K consultant's responsibility to flag that. Now, what happens? Like anything else in the world, okay, like any other things out there, contractors, lawyers, mechanics, realtors, there's a lot of bad ones out there. There's a lot of bad consultants out there that the first thing they say is give me your contractor's bid, and then they match their SOR to the contractor's bid.
Got it.
It's actually reversed. So you get the contractor the scope of work built first. Now what you do, and make it easy for contractors and make it easy to deal with them, you give them a blank scope of work, and with blanked out on the labor and material. It's already lined out. The scope of work's already done and broken out line by line. Yeah. All they need to do is put in their labor and material in each line.
So it's easy for them.
Yeah, and now as the borrower, this is the good part. You know what leveling the bid is, right?
What do you mean by leveling the bid?
So comparing apples to apples.
Oh, okay. Oh,
what's the biggest thing that happens, right? With contractors, you have one contractor gives you a bid of 50 grand, one contractor gives you 100, one contractor gives you 150.
They're all doing different.
And because they're all bidding different scopes of work. Now, your average homeowner doesn't know that. They don't understand, and then they look at the 50 grand, they're like, holy shit, I'm getting a bargain. But then they start day one, they're like, oh, we didn't include kitchen, we didn't include plumbing, we didn't include this. Now you hand that, it's a worksheet. You hand out the exact same worksheet to every contractor. Tell them to fill it out by pen and take a picture of it. Now you can compare apples to apples every single bid, and that makes the process a lot easier. And that's how you actually crush it in this game, is you do it and you treat it like a business. You treat it like it should be treated.
So this is where it gets to the exciting part for me, right? So if I want to buy, because I buy 2, 3, 4 family houses all the time.
Yeah.
I love them. Yeah. They're great. In my opinion, they're the most profitable rentals out there.
Yep.
So if I'm looking to do volume, and this is an FHA loan, how do I use and reuse the 203K over and over again?
You don't.
Fuck.
Yeah, I know. It'd be nice, right? Listen.
Can't I just do? Isn't there like a year, or like you refi out of it with something else? Like I can't.
So here's my response to this. Can you repeat it over and over and over again? Is there anything against it if you follow and confide in the guidelines?
Okay.
You can. Okay. Theoretically, you could buy it. The only requirement is that it's your primary residence for a year after closing. So in the 203K case, it's not even like It's not even like in my case, my renovation took 8 months.
Yeah.
So theoretically, I was like only in the property for 4 until I can get out, right?
Okay.
So get out meaning like, listen, they're not chasing you down, looking and verifying you're showing up every day, but get out in the sense of like they have no statute of limitations to go after you if they did. Okay.
Yeah.
The one year is the statute of limitation, right? Now, I teach people, and the way I frame it and the way I did it was basically I use this as a stepping stone and a huge leverage to get a very low amount out of pocket for a very big return on equity. And then I use that equity and that cash flow to immediately get into hard money, private money, and combining that and just get faster with the real estate, right?
Got it.
So if you're doing a long-term buy and hold, you can do it. The caveat with it is FHA gets a little weird with you can only have one at any given time under your name. So you always have to refinance out into a conventional to get it off your books under that. If you're going to a new property, there's distance rules. You have to be like 150 miles away. If you're really close, you have to have an extremely good reason that an underwriter needs to sign off on.
Even if it's out of that loan into a traditional loan?
Yeah, like, so they call it the exit property or the departing property. There's a lot of FHA guidelines on the property that you're departing. If you're holding onto it, the status of what it is, right? So you need to have active leases in place that are covering your debt to income.
Got it.
You know, you need to have a certain amount of equity in it. It ranges. So there's a lot of, like I said before, FHA guidelines are like, they're very ambiguous, but then they're oddly specific in certain places. You have like, it's 20-25% equity you need into the property, and then you need to be over a certain distance away. If you're not, you have to have a good reason why, job relocation, whatever. So it just gets a little tricky. So the short answer is you can do it. The long answer is I don't think, if you're just beginning, I think the whole idea is you're using this as a gateway to get into the game and then use faster options.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And really, like, I'm thinking at it as someone who's done hundreds and hundreds of deals. Like, all right, cool. Can I use this thing? And then 12 months later, I'll refi into a conventional loan and then go buy another one and just keep rolling one of these things every 12 months.
I know guys that have done it, right? You know, like they've done a couple, but not every 12 months, right? Realistically, like, you know, you do it every couple of years. Like I'm doing another reno now on my own home, another reno loan now. And this is, you know, 4 years after my last one, right? So, you know, can you repeat it and do it over and over again? Yeah, but like this isn't like a flipping model, right? That's the whole reason. The reason they give you the low down payment and all those nice things is because it's a primary residence. It's not a flipping loan, right?
Yeah. So I mean, really, in theory, it's probably the greatest and safest way for somebody who's not an a-hole, who doesn't want to be like, oh, I watched a show on TV, I'm going to start flipping houses. For somebody who's like, you know what, I want to be smart and I want to learn through the process, it's probably the best thing to do because you have training wheels on both the appraisal side and the construction management side. So it's very hard to get in trouble. It's very hard to get in trouble from an evaluation overpaying standpoint.
Bingo.
It's very hard to get in trouble from the standpoint of, you know, I don't understand the scope of work. I overshot the reno, et cetera, all of that. So if you're somebody, I look at it most valuable from this standpoint. You want to get into the business and decide if it's something that you want to do. You don't have a lot of money to do it. And you want some like good governmental oversight. Yep. I don't think you can beat it.
It's, in my opinion, hands down the best way to get into real estate.
So I guess my final question on it is, how do you go about finding good 203K loan officers? Because it's hard to find a good loan officer, period. Let alone a loan officer that understands what the hell a 203K loan is and can process it and get it done in a normal amount of time.
It's a great question, right? So, you know, at the end of the day, again, like anything else, there's niches and there's people that specialize in certain things, right? In every market, I can guarantee it, there's loan officers there that specialize in renovation lending. You don't want to, there's two things that typically happen. So I have people that, I mean, that's the first thing they ask me on Instagram and, you know, all my socials and stuff. The first thing, hey, I'm having trouble finding a renovation lender. Hey, my lender's telling me not to do it. Hey, it's too much of a pain in the ass. All these different things, right? one of two things usually happen. You can approach a lender about it. One thing will happen is they'll steer you away from it because they don't understand it and they don't want to lose your business. Okay. The second thing that'll happen is they'll claim that they can do it because they want your business, and they're going to try to do it, and they're going to make your life a living hell. And that's usually what happens 90% of the time on these loans. Now, that's also what happened to me on my first one. Okay. My lender had no idea what he was doing on it, and that made the first process extremely brutal. It took probably 120 days to close, and it was crazy. It was a shit show. I just closed on the home style loan on my own house. We closed in 44 days. So the reason being is the 44-day loan, actually same lender, but he had just learned how to do it. And when you learn how to do it, it's very easy. Now, how do you find them? The same way you find anything else, right? You really have to sniff it out. You have to look. I think I did it last time we did a podcast. There's my 203K endorsement summary hack. That's a back-ended way to do it. I wouldn't say it's the only way to do it, but you can Google 203K endorsement summary. The first link that comes up is HUD's website. HUD has a log of all the 203K lenders that have endorsed 203K loans in the last month, quarter, and year. So what you could do is you can go to that, you look at your it goes by locale. So like if you look, you're in Long Island, you just look like New York, and you go and you see like, okay, Homebridge is doing the most. What you do is you call their local office and you just ask who heads up your renovation loan department, who does all the renovation loans in your department, and you speak to them. Another way to do it is looking up 203K consultants. You can basically reverse engineer it. Who's going to know who the 203K loan lenders are other than the 203K loan consultants are being called for every 203K loan, and home style loans. They'll get called for home style as well. It's the same process. You call up the 203K consultants, you ask them what lenders they've had good experiences with. First, you verify how often you do them. There's a lot of 203K consultants that they do 1 or 2 a year. It's the 80-20 rule, right? There's 20% of the guys doing 80% of the volume. Find the guys that say they do a lot every year. They do a lot of renovation loans. Ask them who they have the best experience with lender-wise, and then revert back and go that way. But you can Google either one.
So for anybody out there, I want to leave everybody with this. Mm-hmm. If you are someone that is interested in one of two things: A, getting into an investment property in a way that, again, you have training wheels and there's a certain level of oversight. 203K loan, massive opportunity. If you're somebody who is trying to get into a first-time home buyer home and is having an issue because the market's crazy, especially in New York, but you can get grandma's looking house and make it work, but you don't want to come out of pocket because, let's face it, nobody has that money. That's the issue, right? You don't have $200,000 to put into it, but you might as well spend the bank's money and get exactly what you want. So I understand that you have a program where you teach people how to do this on both those levels, whether they're doing it for a house that they want to live in or someone that wants to get into the investment game. So just kind of 30 to 60 seconds on that and how that works and how people can find you.
Sure. So what I do is, all my content is free, and all the stuff I put out there is free on how to do this process, right? When I finished my loan, I wanted to make sure that more people knew about it because it was just insane to me that I was trying to get into real estate investing for years and never heard about this thing. So when I actually did it and saw the power in it, and even through all the trials and tribulations, I knew it was a pain in the ass. I wanted more people to know about it. So that's why I started my platform. That's why I started the 203K Way. I do personally coach and walk people through the process. I have a program, it's called the 203K Way Inner Circle, and I just help people, and basically I hold their hand. Listen, at the end of the day, there's two types of people. There's people that are going to take it and go do it, and they're going to watch my content, and I get people that DM me. I had a guy literally today, thanks for all your help. I'm closing on my triplex on Friday.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I get that all the time, but then I also have people like, hey Matt, I want to do this. I want to do it right the first time. I want to slam dunk it. Can you watch over my shoulder and make sure I get it right? With those people, I make sure I dial, I'm basically a consultant throughout the entire process, from everything from finding the deal, what's a perfect deal for the 203K, how do those pencil out, to finishing the reno, getting it refinanced, getting tenants in, taking the money out and going and buying more deals and becoming a real deal real estate investor.
So people interested in following your content or reaching out to you to be mentored, 203K Way on pretty much every platform, correct?
Every platform. Instagram is really where I hang out the most. It's where we met.
Yep.
In the virtual world, but 203K Way on every platform.
I'm going to end this because I have some crazy questions to ask you that I want to ask you offline. So, handsome home buyer, house, cat pee, not cat pee. You want to sell it? I'm your guy. It's that simple. 516-777 sold. We love his Sal Rizzolo and Greg's hair. That's a wrap.